Are you ready to find out what books you should definitely read when it comes to boosting either your career or your business? In this video, I'm going to go through a few of the favorite books that I've read in the last decade, essentially since I started reading a lot of nonfiction books when I was 18. Nowadays, I honestly have about 800 books probably in my actual physical library if I wasn't traveling around the world at the moment. And I also have my Kindle. So I have gone through and read so many books already on how to improve my own life, improve my business, improve career. And I'm going to walk you guys through my favorite ones that I definitely recommend that you should read. Now, the very first one is the first one that I also really read that I can account as nonfiction, which was the book on How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Now, I'm going to be just using my iPad to show you guys these books. I do have physical copies of some of them, but the problem is because I'm traveling right now in Thailand, I can't really show you. But this book honestly changed a lot of my way of thinking of how I see the world. And the biggest reason for that is that I have always kind of identified as an introvert. I don't really know fully how to make friends unless they were already friends or they're already in my life. So reading Dale Carnegie's book, and it's such a classic for a reason, kind of really gave me a good perspective on how I can interact with people, how I can be an adult essentially. And I remember I read that book when I was actually 18 years old. So when I was still trying to figure out and navigate post, like, okay, now I have a career, what do I do? That book helped me kind of give me a framework and kind of a list of things to be able to test out, see if it works for me, see if it doesn't when it comes to interacting with people. And it's honestly one of the books that I wish I could reread for the very first time, because then it'll give me a little bit of a like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be doing this. But I do reread the book myself just every couple of years or so. It's just a good little refresher. It's filled with tidbits like how important it is to remember someone's name, how to just smile, how to go ahead and make sure that you remember important parts of someone else's story so they can break it up. It's one of the ways you can interact with them. So again, it's one of the first books that outside of like just learning from how other people make friends, gave me again just kind of that framework and walkthrough of how I'm going to be able to do it, especially again as an adult. Now, the second book I really recommend, especially if you are going to start a business, but even if in your career, it's still such a good book to read because it gives you a perspective on how businesses usually work. And it's the book E-Myth by the one and only Michael Gerber. And I remember reading this book when I was starting to run the book publishing company that I ran for a few years. And I was like CEO at 20 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. I just wanted to learn how to run and have a business. And E-Myth was one of the books where it kind of gave me a good system to be able to implement into the business that I was just starting to run. And honestly, I still reread this book. And that's the reason, honestly, why I bought it. When I saw it in a bookstore here in Thailand, I was like, I need a physical copy of this. It seems like the perfect time to reread it. I haven't read it in so long again. And when I started to exceed my virtual assistant agency, I read this again, just so that I can kind of absorbing things again, because you never know what you missed in the first time that you read it, just because you didn't know what you didn't know. And rereading this book helped me a lot when I was starting again 2XU. And now that 2XU is about to hit 6 years, I'm like, maybe it's time to read this again to see what else we can add into what we do at 2XU. E-Myth is sort of one of those books that everyone would recommend when you're starting a business. But again, even if you're doing it for your career, I do highly still recommend reading E-Myth, just because it'll give you that perspective of what it's like to run a business and where you can come in essentially kind of rising up in what it is that you do. Speaking of rising up, the next book I really recommend is Linchpin. I hope you guys can see, and then of course it's going to be in the description below anyway, but it's Linchpin by Seth Godin. And it was one of the books that I usually have all of our employees read as well, just because it's such a good book of how to be indispensable. So indispensable in this case was essentially how to be someone that everyone looked up to and everyone wanted to work with, and being able to be someone who also, it wasn't that you weren't replaceable. It's not like a walkthrough on how to be replaceable at work, because you definitely want to be replaceable at work, because you don't want to be that person who can't take a vacation or a break or have time for family because you're just kind of stuck at work. But it's how to be indispensable, how to be that kind of person where you're the first thing people think of when there's a new project or when there's something that will move your career forward. And as an entrepreneur, it also helped me kind of see who in the company could be indispensable. Who are the people who do want to rise up and do better in what it is that they do. Now, another book I highly recommend is The Psychology of Money. Again, hopefully you guys can see that. I know it's a little bit bright. There you go. By Morgan Housel. I'm sorry if I'm butchering his name. But this was one of the books that I really read for my financial literacy, on how I could better manage my own mindset when it came to money. And I came from kind of middle class, I guess, when I was growing up. Like both my parents worked, but it was, there was 4 kids, so it's managing money. I didn't really see a lot of that for both my parents, because of course I was a kid. So when I started making my own money, when I started having a business, essentially, I needed to really learn how I could make sure I don't overspend or underspend, or somewhere in between. Basically, finding my own balance. And Psychology of Money, outside of other books like Rich Dad Poor Dad, or like the usual financial literacy books that you'll read, this book literally changed, okay, this is how I can track things, how I can put things into savings, how I can start looking at, debt and investments. So it gave me, again, that good kind of, not really 180 of like how I was thinking, but a good way to figure out how I want my own money to look like versus how it looked like for everyone else, because of course what works for one person probably won't work for me. So it gave me kind of a good way to rise up and be more confident on how I can really manage my own money. Now, speaking of kind of building up, essentially being an adult, another book that I really read when I was still about 23, 24 is the book Atomic Habits. I'm going to lower the brightness so you guys can see the cover of that book. There you go. By James Clear. I also really recommend subscribing to his weekly newsletter, because it's really good. But Atomic Habits was one of the books that I read where I was still trying to figure out who I wanted to be, what habits that I wanted to follow, because I know, if you have this kind of person in your head of who you want to be, it breaks down to how you're dealing with the day-to-day. I was trying to figure out, how do I want to do my daily journaling, how to do my meditation, how to make sure I work out, or make sure I read every day. So I learned about habit stacking. I learned about how to make sure that I track them and make sure that I see the progress of what I'm doing, because that builds up the identity that I want for myself. And even when I'm traveling, my habits change. As I'm getting older and have different goals in life, my habits have changed as well. But Atomic Habits gave me that framework of how I want to do it every time that I do want to start a new habit, and every time that I want to kind of slow down on a habit that might not be serving me as well as I thought it would. Now, another book I really want to recommend is the book Key Person of Influence by Daniel Priestley. And the biggest reason why I love this book is this was what I read when I was just starting to grow 2XU. We were a year in, we had a few clients, we weren't really fully pushing out yet because we were still figuring out what systems we wanted to have. And I read this book and I actually joined their accelerator, Dent. I'll put it in the description below, all of the links. But essentially, when I went through Dent, it was such a great blueprint for me to follow as an entrepreneur of how can I show up as someone who creates content, as someone who's on stage, someone who does podcasts. So this gave me kind of the walkthrough of how to brand myself. And both for your career and your business, that's one of the things that you can basically do to stand out, to be someone that people recognize, and or even just seeing as an expert, not really just recognize oh, I know this person, oh no, she knows what she's talking about. This book actually really gave me that walkthrough of how I'm going to be able to do that and figure it out. So essentially, a lot of these books that I'm recommending to you guys are the books that really changed me when I was still going through different phases and different changes in my life. And of course, I would not go through this whole video of recommending books if I didn't mention my own book, Scale You. So I wrote Scale You. I honestly started writing it in 2021. I was going through a breakup. I was going through a little bit of grief, and this was the distraction that I poured into. So Scale You is a book that I wrote on how to grow beyond yourself. So that's why it's Scale You. How to do it with a virtual assistant and how to do it with AI, especially in the age of AI. This got published February of this year of 2025, and I'm so proud of it. It's just so cool, and I use it a lot and reference it in a lot of the YouTube videos that I've done, mostly because it is that, me literally picking apart a part of my brain and putting it in here. And I mentioned a lot of these books that I just went through with you guys. are also like mentioned in here just because I reference them a lot, just because again, that's how much I love these books and how much they've given me that walkthrough in life of how to do certain things and how to think of things a certain way. So I hopefully you guys will grab a copy of this. But this is essentially when you're at that stage in your business and you're trying to figure out, oh, do I want to hire someone? Do I need help? This is the book to read. Again, all of the books, all of these will be in the description below. I'll probably just create like a really quick resource page for everyone so you guys can just check it out at any time. But yeah, that's essentially, of course, me talking about and hopefully enticing you guys to read my book, just because it's essentially how to hire, how to systematize with a virtual assistant. And also, if you are a virtual assistant yourself, it's probably a book that you want your client to read, just because it walks through how to give feedback, how to delegate, how to be really clear when it comes to working with different people, how to adapt with AI, and how to implement in your business. So depending on where you're at, what stage you're at, Scale You is probably the next thing that you need to get to where else you want to be, either in your career or in your business. And of course, because it is my book, I can't talk about it too much without truly self-promoting. But again, of course, I love it. It's my baby. It's like literally, again, took me 3 years to write. Then on the 4th year, it got published. So happy that it's now finally out. And those are basically it. Those are the main books that I would read again if I could, like the very first time, that helped me a lot when it comes to thinking about my life, my career, my business, and of course, sprinkling in my own book there at the very end. And if you guys want to check any of those out, again, they'll be in the link below. If you guys are reading it on Kindle, like I usually do, it's on my iPad, but it's on the Kindle app for me. And if you guys do want to work with me in some way or capacity, whether you want mentorship or you want to go ahead and even hire an assistant through as a 2XU, all of those links again will be below. And of course, if you guys like this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button right there. Comment below what books do you love reading, or what books from the list of mine have you already read? I would love to know. And if you still haven't yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button right there so you don't miss any of my videos every Sunday and Thursday on how to work from home and how to business from home, which you guys can check out those 2 YouTube channels right here and the latest video right here. Hope you guys have an amazing day, and with that, small steps matters, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!